I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, y'all. It is almost the end of the month. It is August 30th, Monday, my favorite day. 62 degrees in beautiful Kitsap County. As I said before, we've got a really big show for you today. Super excited about this one. As you can see, the voices are becoming more and more and more and more as we grow and we continue to do this and find ways to collaborate and serve the community in a more holistic way. Super excited, super pumped, very glad to be here, blessed and highly favored. Got my sidekick here, Sabrina. How you doing, Sabrina?
I'm good. Hello.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and bring some folks that are already in so they can say hello, and we'll let some more folks kind of come on in and we'll get the show going. So how is everyone doing? I see Martita, I see Okoye, I see Matt and Jill. How is everyone today?
We're doing great.
All right.
How are you?
You know, blessed and highly favored for sure. Just super excited. You know, when Okoye and Deborah and Christina, we all met, I had no idea that this was going to be this and turn into this, right? And we wanted to be able to have conversations that were important for our clients in the community that we serve. And it is quickly blossomed into this. And so it's remarkable. I love meeting the people that I'm meeting. You know, I challenge folks to try to meet 5 new people every month, you know, to increase your circle of influence, your circle of support. And you got to practice what you preach. And so it's been great getting to know each person, you know, beyond just a phone call to deal with whatever the potential issue is with the client or the organization. So I think, you know, as we continue to grow in this way, we're going to be able to do our jobs better, and it will decrease, you're going to have misinformation, you're going to have, turmoil from time to time. But when you understand where people are coming from, then you can extend grace both ways. You can give yourself grace and move and navigate and really, because it's about who we're serving. So just really excited about that. So yeah, for sure. How you doing there, Koye?
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? It's good to see everyone. I'm excited about it as well. You know, this is something that we have been working on since 2016 to see how prepared we are in case of emergencies, in case of crises, you know, that we must work together as a community and really be able to see how we're serving all of our community as well as the underserved or the diverse populations within our county. And so I'm excited because this is a conversation that, like I said, we've been having for quite a while with Ms. Martita May and myself, as well as contacting our city government and our city leaders. How well do we serve and support our community for public health and safety? And so I'm so happy that Jill, as well as everyone that's here tonight, for us to really have that conversation. We are right here on the anniversary of Katrina and disasters that are happening across our nation as well as the globe. And also, we're coming up on our 20th year anniversary of our man-made disaster of 9/11. And so how are we having these conversations? How are we doing some intervention and prevention, reaching our most vulnerable within our communities, which is our elders, our youth, our homeless, those that are disabled. We have to have a conversation. I don't think it serves us well to be reactionary so that we only show up. We have learned quite a bit through the pandemic and through COVID. And here we are going into our fall and winter season, dealing with the variances of the Delta variants of COVID. And we have a lot of things that we should be preparing for in case of emergencies. So I
Okoye,
think we
let me stop you there for a second. You're getting a little bit of feedback there. It might be your speaker system there. Are you listening through your headphones there?
no, I don't have my headphones on here.
Okay, if you have some, that'd be great because I think we're getting some feedback from it coming out of your speakers. How you doing there, JD Sweet?
I'm doing all right.
I appreciate seeing you and coming on. That's awesome. And we haven't had a chance to actually meet officially, but I've heard so much about you. So I look forward to meeting you in the flesh at some near future.
All right. Yeah, we can arrange that. That'll be good.
Yeah, Roosevelt Smith was saying a lot of powerful things about you on Saturday. So things that I didn't even know about you. So it's awesome. You're legendary.
Okay, man. I'll take that. That's good.
All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get us started as folks start coming in, and we do want to recognize the tribe. This is the first time that I've read this statement, so bear with me. Let us begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our indigenous neighbors, the Port Gamble Skolum tribe, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain, every grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanquished. And that is from Chief Seattle in 1854. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is within the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, people of clear salt water, Suquamish people, expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers. The Suquabs live in harmony with the lands and the waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here on the Suquabs live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. So thank you for that. Tonight, we are going to get into emergency management and preparedness. And as Okoye was sharing earlier, 9/11 SOS, and both Martitha and Okoye will reflect on that. And then we're going to kind of go around and just hear from our subject matter experts on what they want to share, what's important from their standpoint, and us being ready. I think it's very apropos in an unfortunate way that New Orleans would be going through another tumultuous time as they just did with Katrina not so long ago. So folks are just rebuilding to have to go through that again. We talk about it here in this region, about the big earthquake that is somehow due, and we're not prepared for it. We weren't prepared for COVID. We're not prepared for the Delta variant. As we can see, there was an article in the Kitsap Sun where our hospital staff, our jails, KCR just had a bout of COVID, and kids are going back to school this week, and so it's uncertain times and it's scary times, and we need to be prepared. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do better? What did we learn? And how do we share it with those that don't have equitable access to information? So all of these things are tremendously important. That's it. Let me go ahead and welcome in Julie Farrell. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you, Martita, if you're ready. If not, I will give it to Okoye if she wants to go first.
Yes, I'm ready. Everyone. Thank you. Marwan, first of all, I wanted to thank everyone who accepted our invitation to participate in this 9/11 SOS podcast. And I just wanted to acknowledge 6 years ago, we started, Karen and I, with this after Katrina and the 9/11, commemorations. So we started thinking, how can we best help our community, reaching the marginalized community, make inclusion? How can we help to bring this up to the community and all together as a whole? How can we support to meet these barriers, to provide education, this education piece about when a disaster, to be ready, to always be prepared, because we never know what's going to happen. So, for example, the pandemic, COVID-19, we didn't know what was going to happen, and we all got together, and come up with solutions, embracing everybody about equity and inclusion, reaching out to the marginalized community. So that was one of the things that we came up 6 years ago. And now with this pandemic, I know that, and Marwan, how it's a collaboration. All agencies and every individual here collaborating to find solutions. Meeting and filling out those gaps. So again, we are here for the celebrating the 20th anniversary of the 9/11. Paying respect to those victims who died in the towers in the 9/11. So also acknowledging that one of our community member from Navy, Brian Moss, he lost his life over there. So we come up with this award that we're going to be presenting, every year to people who recognize that have been done a lot in this community. So we are here again to find solutions, to come together and make a commitment. How can we best all together can support this event, and acknowledging the 9/11 SOS, coming together on 9/11, September 11th, at 9:11 a.m. at the Evergreen Park. So please stay tuned. We're going to be providing more information via website, Facebook, and it's about all of us supporting each other, supporting victims, supporting our community. So I thank everybody for coming at the last minute and accepting our invitation. I really appreciate it. With me and Karen are very grateful for this community and for your commitment. Thank you.
Is Martitha May, who is huge in our community. I'm going to ask everyone, if you will, mute your speakers because the feedback is coming out of your speakers and then feeding back. So when you speak, just go ahead and mute your speakers. Yep, that's perfect. Whoever just did that, that was awesome. That fixed everything. So that'll make it a lot clearer for everyone. So I hope you didn't miss anything that Martita had to say. She will be coming back on a little bit later. But yes, definitely 9/11 SOS, the memorial will be on 9/11. And just really quickly, Martita, when it's clear, just tell everyone when the event is and where to show up.
Yes, thank you. We there are open invitation for all agencies, anyone who would like to participate with an informational table at the event. It will be at the Evergreen Park at 9/11, Saturday, September 11th. We're going to start setting up booth at 8 o'clock, and the program will start at 9:11 a.m. right there by the where the Juneteenth. Remember, you guys are familiar where we had celebrated the Juneteenth. So we're going to be there. So please reach out. You can send me an email, you can text me, or you can send me information via Mesa Redonda, and we'll be happy to just go to the Facebook to enroll and signing up for booth, informational booth. I would like to request, if you have bilingual material, please, because we really need to reach out to the marginalized community, Spanish community, Spanish speaking, and later in the future, we're going to have more languages available. But please, if your agency has those materials and bilingual materials, please bring it to the event. Yes. And phone number, I can put it in here. If you guys want to reach out, I just gonna put it in the chat. And also you can go to Facebook, Kids Up Mesa Redonda.
All right. And
Thank
so
you.
as Martita is putting that in the chat, I will make that available for everyone. Martita, if you would, just go ahead and put all of that information in the chat, and then I'll put it on the other side so people can copy that information.
Thank you.
Okoye, would you like to come on and kind of set the tone and let everyone know what we're talking about, why it's so important?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see everyone's face here tonight. I think that what we need to do here for our community as well as for our county is to ensure that we are responding in an equitable way, that resources are distributed in a timely manner, that we are creating an effective, equitable disaster response and preparedness plan that would reach all of our community, our most vulnerable within Kitsap County. The reason why we're here tonight is because back in 2015, we had a county-wide coming together with FEMA, with first responders, law enforcement, community leaders, military, everyone. They held this at the Admiral Theater. When we looked around, there were no community leaders of color that I could see within the informational, where all of the resources were given for the disaster and for earthquake preparedness. And the only reason why I was privy to it was because I was part of the military, and our Legion was represented, the 172nd Legion. And so that really disturbed me. So Martita and I both went down. I mean, the immigrant community wasn't there. I did not see many of our Hispanic, whether African American, whether our Indo-Pino, Filipino, Pacific Islanders were not in that room. And so that was alarming to me. And so we went down and we reached out to our mayor, to our city leadership, and we said, how is all of this information being given to all of our communities? And so that's when we started on this journey. But I can tell you, it's been an uphill journey all the way. And one of the things that I had said to Martita is, we've been working diligently since 2016 to just get information in other languages to be able to give them out so that those communities know where the resources are, know how to respond, that they would get a prepared on this plan for their families and for their communities. And so I'm saying that when we experienced the pandemic, we saw the disparities, and we need to do better. This is a call to action for our county and our communities to do better when it comes down to emergency response, how we respond to catastrophes, to disasters, whether it's man-made or natural. And so we've got a lot of work to do in Kitsap County. And so that's why we're here tonight, to talk about what we really need to do as a community to have these conversations so that we can ensure that all of our communities are being informed, they're being educated, they're giving the resources. And so that's why we're here tonight. We also saw the disparities within our housing for our homeless. So we've got a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely would second that. I see a lot of heads nodding in agreement. Well, let's jump right in and start hearing from our folks. Right now, David Rasmussen isn't here
Rasmus.
quite yet, so let's jump right to Amanda Gardner, who is the founder of the Catalyst Charter Schools here. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming on. Go ahead. I'm just going to give it on to you. I wanted to
All
ask you
right.
some questions, but we'll jump in there later.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Today was actually our very first day with our students back. So I come to you from a really wonderful and very, very busy day. And as you mentioned, I am one of the co-founders of Catalyst Bremerton. We are a tuition-free public school. We opened here in Bremerton last school year. So just as we were really hitting the first kind of crisis wave related to COVID, but we were able to open remotely for a few months at the beginning of last school year, and then we welcomed our scholars back for in-person learning really since about November of last year. And at Catalyst, we really value our community. We like to say that we're a school that was built with community, hand in hand, not for our school community. And we're really proud that we've put together a school that represents the diversity of Bremerton and Kitsap County itself. Our mission is really all around community change making and student leadership development. And we are growing to serve students in grades kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. And I was really excited when, we were invited to come to this particular 9/11 event. But we try to have a presence at any and all community events. We've been on the Juneteenth Planning Committee now for several years and always enjoy attending that, as well as several others. And I think the reason is that when we talk to our students, our scholars about, becoming leaders and change makers, that really starts with them seeing themselves represented in not only their school community, but in the community at large, and helping them to really find solutions to challenges that face our community. So we're happy to be here and happy to help in any way that we can.
So I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that are happening at the charter school? Are the kids masking up? What is what are the parents' concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. We follow quite a few sort of COVID public health protocols and have since we brought our scholars back mid last year. We're all masked, whether we're vaccinated or not. All of our staff are vaccinated per the governor's mandate, but almost all were before. And we really try to practice the social distancing and all of that. I think, we've been lucky, knock on wood, all through last year, we didn't have any COVID cases on our campus transmitted at school. And I think part of that is just following those procedures really consistently. And part of it is we're very lucky because since we're a new school, we just renovated our building and put in a new HVAC system with air purifying filters and that sort of a thing. So, we're doing all the things that we're supposed to do and seeing that, so far, knock on wood, we've kept the virus out of our school community. So our aim is to continue to do that.
Can I also ask if it continues to go in the wrong direction as these numbers seem to be increasing, or we get a new variant and it's just running rampant? What is the charter school doing? What's kind of your emergency plan for that? Is it to go to distance learning, and when do you decide when to pull that particular trigger?
Yeah, the advice that we're getting from the health departments on that is that you really have to look at your local data. So within a school, if you're not seeing signs of COVID being transmitted at the school, then you should, stay open. We know that in-person schooling is the best for kids, especially when it comes, through that lens of equity. When it came time when we felt like we could safely bring kids back, we focused on bringing back our scholars, who need that in-person schooling the most, be it because they might have, special education needs or English learner needs, or just kids that we know, have fallen behind already and need that extra support. And I think one of the silver linings of launching our school during COVID is that because we had to start remotely, we learned really quickly how to pivot and how to do that online learning, I think as well as it can be done. And so we will revert back to that if we absolutely have to. But, to Karen's point, just around equity gaps that we see in Kitsap County with our youth, we can see really clearly how all of the social isolation has really, and just the loss, we have a lot of families who have lost relatives due to COVID. We just see really clearly how that's impacting some scholars more than others. And so we want to stay safe and keep the doors open as long as we can.
Thank you for that. I think that's really important, for folks to know, parents, students also. If, I want to kind of keep this in a more kind of a dialogue, a conversation, not so much of a lecture. So if any of you that are here on the panel have a question or a statement that you would like to kind of put out there as you're listening to other folks speak, please do that, because I think this is a great forum. Just out of curiosity, how many of you know at least 3 people in the panel today? If you just raise your hand. Okay. How about 5? All right. I see a couple hands. Anyone know everyone on the panel?
Almost.
All right. So, I mean, what that means is that's opportunity, right? For those of us that know 1 or 2, as I was saying before, JD Sweet, I've heard about JD, but I've never met JD, right? So, we're all doing this work in the community, and you get the Venn diagram of overlapping in providing services to each other in some ways, but by coming together and meeting, and it allows us to do our mission even more effectively. So I think that's really powerful and awesome. So thank you so much for that, Amanda. Anyone have any questions or comments for Amanda? All right. If not, if we do have them later, and I do want to tell the audience, if you have any comments or questions, please do type them in the chat, because they are here to answer your questions. So that's super important. We'll go on now to Dave Erasmussen. And Dave, we're so excited that he has come to us from the Kitsap County Department of Emergency Preparedness and is the Public Information Officer. So how are you doing there, Dave?
Hey, I am very well. Thank you so much for having me as a guest here tonight.
It's a pleasure to meet you on this podcast. I'm just going to turn it over to you and benefit from your expertise there, sir.
Well, what I want to share tonight is that every day of the year is a good day for individuals and families to grow in their level of preparing for emergencies and disasters. So there's no bad time. But we also want to be mindful that when events happen around the country and around the world, that heightens our awareness that any place in the world is vulnerable to either a natural disaster or a human-caused disaster. And what we do in our mission is to keep families and individuals safe when we have events that could include a winter storm or an earthquake or anything like that. We want people to stay safe. So our mission, our focus is to give people the information to know what to do to stay safe, and then how to get ready because earthquakes, winter storms disrupt life, and people have to be able to take care of themselves and their neighbors when emergencies come up. So, as you all know, right now there's been a horrific hurricane that has taken place in Louisiana and in the surrounding states. So many families have been deeply, deeply impacted, and our hearts go out to those who have suffered extreme loss, um, injuries. Um, we don't know how many lives have been lost, but we know property has been damaged dramatically. We know that just a number of weeks before that, the nation of Haiti experienced once again a devastating earthquake. And so I am a native of Western Washington. And at one time growing up here, I thought that we just didn't have big disasters. But you know what? We do have all kinds of events and all kinds of vulnerabilities. So, my mission is to share with the wider community that there are things that they can do to stay safe. And I'm going to just highlight a couple things. One is that people need to know the risks of what kind of disasters we face. And especially, we need to be mindful that we have earthquake that could happen at any time. So, knowing what to do to stay safe is so important. And so, with that, knowing what to do when the earth shakes is so important. We encourage people to know how to drop, cover, and to hold on. And so, we train our kids the third Thursday of every October in that exercise, and we train many other adults as well in community groups and organizations and businesses to take part in that as well. The second thing I'd highlight is that we want people to have supplies in hand. They need to have a small bag of the most essential things in case they can't stay in their home. They can grab their go bag and go to safety someplace else. But we want families to be building up their pantries so that they have food and water in case we experience a bigger disaster that means that our stores won't be open like they would be ordinarily. The third and final thing I'm going to emphasize is that we're in this together. It's so important for families to reach out to their neighbors so that they can know how to help and support each other. Um, you may be the one needing help, or maybe it's your neighbor is going to be the one needing help. So, building those friendships and those relationships of trust and support with your immediate neighbors, both at home and then at the workplace as well, is so important. So, we encourage people to do those very simple things. And I'm excited to be at the 9/11 event as an organization. We're going to have safety and preparedness material ready and available both in English and Spanish. Thank you for this time just to give a few reminders and encouragement to take serious the responsibility of preparing for emergencies and disasters.
Absolutely. That's fantastic information. And you were saying that there are going to be materials. Where would you direct folks as far as the website or a phone number to call in and ask questions that they may have?
You know, that's great. Why don't I'll look to put my email in the chat. And that would be a great starting point because I could just then respond to the specific question that anyone would have and would be glad to follow up. So as quickly as I learn how to do the chat, I'll do that. But I can say in verbally, our website's a great place to start. And so that's kitsapdem.org. And so that's a starting point. We're going to be enhancing that website in the coming months. And with that, if you Googled Washington State Emergency Management, that's another great site as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and do my best to add my long email address, and then people can ask me follow-up questions, and I hope that they do.
All right. So say that again. That was Washington State Emergency Management.
Yes, and so if you go there and then look for the preparedness resources, that is the full library. That is brand new, great information.
All right, that is fantastic. Are there any folks that are on our panel that have questions for Dave? I'm so glad that you came on. That's really powerful information.
Yes. Dave, this is Akuye Karen Vargas. We really must get this information in multiple languages. Is
Yes.
there information that can be disseminated and given to our communities, that we are making sure that we are closing those gaps and that we are preparing our community the best we can? I know that within King County and Pierce County, they have multiple languages and resources to be able to get this information and education out to their communities. Is there a way that we can begin to cultivate that here in Kitsap County, where we're really connecting those dots and closing those gaps to be able to respond in a healthier way?
I love that question. So the beginning of that answer is that we've taken serious the importance of having materials in Spanish. We know that's not the end, that's really the beginning. So what I would ask is, if you as my other community leaders want to help us to know what are the additional languages that would really help us strengthen our preparedness. I know that I can access and get materials in other languages. And so I'm glad to do that, especially when I know which ones specifically will really help us with our needs.
Dave, I would like to piggyback with Karen Akuya. I would like to see in your website, because I know it's a lot of need in the community, and we must meet those needs. Besides having, dialects, and we have people who speak other dialects, but some of the dialects, it's not written dialect. So you cannot just, put flyers there. I would like to see some type of videos in their own dialect, because some people is audio, we had to use many sources that we can meet their needs and, eliminate those barriers. So having video about preparedness, emergency preparedness, that'd be a really great key to use to support these families, marginalized community. So I would like to see that in your website. And also, if the website can be translated in many different languages, I can touch base with you and give you information how you can, your IT guy it's so easy to do it. And they just click, maybe the flag or something in there, and then they will immediately translate your website in many different languages. So that, yes, is something that we have to see.
Yeah, I love that. And right now, we're taking a very outdated website and updating it. So within a few months, I anticipate a lot more of that would be readily available to do the instant translation. I love the idea of creating a and this is really where we can work together as a wider community to make videos, to give basic instruction, and then to have those available, on demand, and to share them, spread them out, let different groups be able to use those freely. I really think that would be a tremendous gain for us as a whole community, and I'm very supportive of that.
Thank you. The other thing I would like to touch base, you mentioned the third Thursday every October. Why once a year and not doing it more often for our community? I think our community needs more to see this more often, because once a year, I think it's not enough.
You're making a good point. This is a national event. So this is one time a year where states across the United States on the West Coast, the East Coast, the middle of the United States. Everybody's participating together. So it's just a one time where everyone participates, but every organization should be practicing earthquake drills other times during the year as well. But we make a big deal of this because it's especially a good day for all of our school kids to remember how important it is to stay safe in an earthquake. And the thing I challenge kids to remember as well as parents is that even though you crawl under a table or a desk during the daytime to stay safe, if the earthquake takes place at night, stay in bed, roll onto your stomach, and put the pillow over your head and stay in bed until the shaking stops. So if you can share that, all of you listening today, with friends and especially parents as well as young kids, let them know that's how you stay safe at nighttime in an earthquake. That would be a great gain even tonight.
Let's bring to the school districts one of your, excuse me, one of your personnel, to provide these practically will be education piece to school districts, and that'd be great because you guys are the experts. I wanted to say one of you experts bringing here.
Well, I'm going to give a lot of credit to our school districts. They've really been working at this for years, and we come alongside to support and encourage, but they've taken it serious, and we just want to keep the momentum going.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, just jumping in, but on the school district side, and I'm sure my colleagues from other districts can also share, the October date is also, widely something that we do across the districts for disaster preparedness, and specifically for earthquake preparedness for all of our schools. But then throughout the year too, I know we have really tried to build up the disaster awareness and preparedness as an educational piece, as you mentioned, Martita, because it is such an important thing, not just in the academic side, but looking at that whole student and real life skills. That is something that we definitely try to practice and educate all our families and students about.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Dave? I think all those were really great suggestions.
Dave, I have one more question for Dave. As we go forward, because we have lived in our own experience with these gaps, and we can understand that we have to do better. But how are we building what I call emergency relations and with diverse communities? Because I say we should not be just reactive. We should be doing intervention and prevention. We should be building and strengthening relationships across cultural barriers and diverse communities. So, are we intentional enough in that area to be able to start cultivating that?
I love the question. My quick answer is that we've started down that path, but we have a long way to go.
Yes.
And with that, what I would say, just as one person, I'm part of a small team, but our strength is in our relationships. And the more we're connected, the more that we see ourselves as part of one team, the more effective we're going to be. The commitment that I've made in the past that I will continue is that as I receive invitations to come and be a guest to any group, to any organization throughout the county, I will be an ambassador to share and to encourage and to let people know that safety and preparedness is within reach, and we can do this together. Now, we do need to continue to build the web of relationships that will make us even stronger when we do have an event. and we do have an experience, whether it's a winter storm, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's the continued challenge of responding to the pandemic. So we do need to continue on that front. And we've been in the background supporting Kitsap Public Health District in our pandemic response. So we've got a long way to go, but we're moving that direction.
I'll say, to add into that, we cannot wait, for our government, whether it's, at the federal level or at the local level, to kind of fix the situation. It is really incumbent upon us to start cultivating relationships with each other. And this really is, I hope, the name of the podcast, The Conduit, is one way in which we can do that. And this is what that looks like, and that we can take these things out. And, a lot of times folks believe that they need to connect with some large organization or they need a bunch of money to do all these different things. And that's just not true. It really just takes, the desire to start working with like-minded people that have different skill sets to come together and start to be more forward thinking. We can all think about how we got caught unaware and the impact on us when paper towels and hand sanitizer and mask and just all that uncertainty and how fearful we were during that time. So what will we do different now? What can we do to help to minimize that as we go forward, while these organizations and the government come alongside and start to build these capacities for relationship and growth? So just something to think about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of order really quick because Julie does need to leave. So Julie, if you don't mind, why don't you come on in from the Bremerton School District?
Yeah, sorry about that. I just shared I have a young child who's going to have to go to bed soon. So unfortunately, I can't stay as long as I would like. But thank you for having me. And thank you so much for putting this on. What a wonderful dialogue to have with such a great group of people who, I think we all come from a place of like-mindedness and with similar goals, but also with such broad experiences and backgrounds. And so it's so great that we can have this dialogue. And I know you just shared on this, but thinking on how we build relationships with each other, exactly this of the chance to have conversations in a safe space and be open with each other, I think is such a fantastic way that I now feel very comfortable with possibly reaching out to you, to some of the folks on the panel tonight for more input and questions and following up on the information that you shared. So as you mentioned, I'm from the Bremerton School District, and similar to our other school folks on here, we're just in the process of getting the school year started, and we are all so excited to be back in person, and hoping that we can be as long as time and the health district permits. But of course, the safety of our staff and our students is always going to be the #1 priority. So we're just hopeful for what this year looks like. We are, similarly starting the year with masks and continued social distancing and safety procedures in place. But we have learned how to pivot if need be. So those precautions and those backup plans and backup plans are in place if we need to resort to those. One of the big things we're really working on this year, which I think is in the same context of everything we're talking about, is, we have had such an interesting past year and a half, and coming back, there's going to be a real big focus for us on building relationships back with students and family, and how do we go from having relationships in a distance format to having those relationships and those meaningful connections again in person. Which can sometimes be tricky when you have to give 3 feet of distance, especially with our little kids. It's hard to be as close as we want to with some of them, while keeping that physical space. Just a few other things to share, that we are starting again full in person, and We'll have transportation and childcare running just as we normally do, as normal as we're able to be right now. So that's where we're at starting the year out.
I have a question for you. I have a 9-year-old going on 10 here, entering into the 5th grade. Her grandma's actually in the Zoom. And one of the things that is scary for me is as kids are coming back to school, as the Delta variant is running rampant, and we're seeing more kids contracting COVID. What is the policy for as far as discipline or corrective action if there are kids or staff that aren't masking up? Is there a way that kids can report that? What does that look like for a child?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, there's that hard line always with discipline of making sure it's meaningful and constructive and not punitive. And that's something as a school district, and I think all of our colleagues in other districts have been working on making sure that we're trying to get away from punitive discipline or just behavioral referrals, and making sure that it's constructive and growth mindset. That being said, this is also a health risk and a health concern. So for staff wise, I mean, it's kind of cut and dry almost across the board that we require that our staff are wearing face coverings unless there is some sort of medical exemption. And then they're not necessarily exempt, but there's the alternatives with face shields, with the under the chin face coverings as an option. But all of our staff is going to have to be wearing face coverings pretty much at all times unless they're actively eating or drinking. And then we also, per the state of Washington, have our vaccination mandate. So we're having a few different levels of that. During the summer or previously before the vaccination mandate, we had to do daily attestations to do temperature checks and health checks to make sure that if you were feeling unwell or there was any symptoms, you were staying home. With students, we are, as you mentioned, we're requiring that they wear masks and a face covering at all time. And if there is some medical reason that might prevent a child from wearing our typical face mask or face covering, then we work with the family to do an alternative face covering, but there still has to be some protection there. As far as a child during the day, that is something that's being added to, and I hate using the word discipline, but reminders, reframing a student, that is something that is being very much addressed right now of working with staff and students to say this is a school rule, and you have to be wearing your mask during the day. And if you're not, you're going to be reminded. And if you have to be reminded multiple times, then it does result in a call and getting the parents involved in some sort of action, because as much as we don't want to, be punitive with students or cause more disruptions, when it comes to the health and safety, we can't mess around. So, there are requirements that every child is going to have to wear a face covering, and if they don't, and if it's a repeat offense and something we have to work on, then there's going to need to be some learning opportunities for them.
Oh, thank you for that. I think there's other, parents and kids that have that concern too. Is there a certain threshold where something would trigger if there's an outbreak? I don't know what else to call it, where it might cause an individual school to close down. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I don't know what the exact number or threshold is, but there is. So every district has to have a COVID administrator, so someone who is regularly watching those numbers, dealing with any possible cases. So they are overseeing it at the district level. And then also at each school site building, we have to have a COVID administrator who is also in charge of looking at any possible exposure, doing contact tracing, doing interviews, wellness checks, all of those type of things to make sure that we have those protocols in place. And if there is any exposure or any positive tests for COVID, then and it's all directed with our within the collaboration with the health district. So they are deeply involved. If we have any fear or any exposure case, we communicate with them and they help guide us through that process of what it looks like. That could be as little as a student or staff quarantining. But if they've been exposed to others, it might be an individual class that quarantines, and then it could be a school. I think from what I understand, and that is not the end all be all, but we are trying to have it as localized and controlled as possible, and hoping to not have widespread quarantining or push back to virtual learning as much as possible. But it will be under the guidance of the health district and what they are telling us to do. That being said, if anyone is nervous, and Martita just dropped this question in there, if any parent is truly concerned about sending their child in person, or the child wearing a mask or something like that, we have increased our distance learning options. So there's the home link option that we've had for a while now, where it's more of the homeschool option, that the parents are supporting the child with their academics at home, but then we also have opportunities for them to connect with their peer. As well as we've really increased, and it's actually new, that we have our virtual learning academy, which is going to be more similar in design to what we saw with some of our distance learning opportunities for students. So if distance learning really was a great experience and was very beneficial for your children and your family, we do still have that as an option, where we have dedicated teachers who will be connecting with students and families through online platforms. And that's how they will be delivering instruction, following up with interventions, and offering that as an opportunity for families that really worked well with, or we have families that absolutely they're warranted to still be concerned with sending their kids to school right now. So that is an opportunity we have.
As a follow-up question, is there a way for a parent to have access to what the current numbers are so that they can be informed? Like, how would they go about figuring that out?
Yeah, so the Department of Health actually regularly publishes those numbers. And so through the Kitsap Department of Health website, you can see the trending cases. They are not listed by school or by site, because that's not something we release, and that's not public viewing information. But countywide, those numbers are trending. Yeah,
I'm sorry. That was kind of my question, Julie.
Oh, yeah.
If my daughter's attending the school, and the school is starting to increasing cases as an individual, and
Yep.
you're saying there is a threshold that will trigger, but how would a parent know? So you're saying basically they would just need to watch the Kids at Public Health site, and if it hit that threshold, then the school, of course, would reach out to the parents and let them know.
So that would be, if it's like countywide. So there is a threshold for the state and for the county, that if we reach a certain threshold number, then that would trigger the schools possibly closing. And I know they're trying to avoid that this year, but of course, public health and safety comes first. For the school level, if there was any outbreak or exposure, that is something that is communicated at the school level with parent notification. So if there was a possible positive case, or the possibility of a relative or something having a possible case, the school would be communicating that. And thankfully, we've been very lucky that we haven't really had that happen. We had a couple scares, but nothing happening with our students. So that's been fantastic. But that is something that absolutely we would inform parents right away.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
these are questions that I've had for most of the summer. And so being accessible, this is what this looks like. So are there anyone else that's on the panel, either on Zoom or Restream, that has any questions for Julie before we let her put her kiddo to bed?
I do.
Go ahead.
So what's the magic number? What's the number that triggers the schools to close?
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
I was wondering what's the magic number? What's the number that triggers action? What's the number that triggers the schools to close?
Yeah, and maybe Dave, if you have that insight, I am actually not sure what the number is right now. I know we changed a little bit from initially in the spring a couple years ago, and then when we were at last fall, what that looked like. But I actually don't know what that threshold number is. I apologize. I'm not in the COVID department currently at our school district.
I could speak a little bit to that, Julie, if you don't mind. I know that I believe that the cutoff for kind of the high activity rate is they still are looking at the number of cases over the 7 or 14 day period. And if we get above 350, then I believe that that triggers larger scale closings. What they have, so every week, the superintendents of all of the schools and Chief Kitsap, the tribal compact school that we have here in Kitsap, and the private schools, we have calls with the Department of Health where we regularly get updates. So the information does change. We actually have one tomorrow. But my understanding previously has been that, you know, really at the point where you have 2 or more cases of COVID at a school that are not related. So 2 kids that aren't related to one another or sharing a home, that's the point at which they would consider either a classroom to shut down and move online or a whole school too. So I think it's a pretty high bar, but again, that advice changes a little bit just depending on the numbers.
Please go ahead.
We're seeing our top leadership, you know, federal government, moving towards mandating vaccination, at least with our armed forces and those employed within the federal government. So I'm wondering how our county is approaching that. Are we considering mandating, mandating vaccination for county employees? Are we considering mandating vaccination for our children, our teachers? We had, I noticed in the news today, we had heard that the call for masks was affected 12 children. You know, so is that something that you guys are looking at, considering, or even discussing to mandate vaccination for faculty members and so forth?
Yeah, so as far as the school district goes, the individual school districts are not mandating it. However, our state superintendent, Chris Reichdahl, along with our governor, has mandated that all education employees have to be vaccinated by the middle of October. So that is not something locally that we have been able to have control over necessarily for staff. Statewide, that is what we were mandated to do as public state employees. So that is something that we are working through. There, is some level of religious and medical exemption that, of course, has to happen. But for the most part, all of our staff in the education field in the state of Washington are going to be vaccinated for public schools and public education. For students, however, that is still not something that we are ready to discuss or to mandate. I don't believe, and any of my other Kitsap school folks jump in, but I don't believe any of us in the county will necessarily be mandating that students have to be vaccinated, at least not at this point. If that does happen, I think that will be a bigger discussion, like Amanda mentioned, with the superintendents and with the state guiding and leading a lot of that. But there's still a lot of unknowns and still a lot of testing that needs to happen for kids before they get vaccinated. So at this point for students, I don't think that is something that will be happening in the near future.
Okay, one last thing, and I'll move on. What about like how to describe this, but secondary type employees, people that come into the schools that aren't necessarily
Mhm.
by the state, but may have access or contact with the child, visitors, so forth. Or you guys, you may invite like some specialists to come talk to a group, or to a class, or
Mhm.
are you requiring them to be vaccinated? And after that, I have a question.
Yeah, so for those secondary kind of folks, we are still continuing to limit the guests that we have that enter a school building. So we over the past year and a half, we went on a staff only mandate. So we didn't allow any volunteers or any visitors into the classroom. That is being loosened a little bit. Where we may have volunteers that enter the classroom or the school building, but only if they are a regularly occurring, consistent individual that will be coming in as a guest. At this point this year, we are still not going to be allowing a lot of like guest speakers or visits or things like that, because we do want to limit the amount of possible exposures that could happen. And so we're still trying to, tread with as much safety and as much precaution as possible. So we are looking at that. I don't know off the top of my head if we are requiring our volunteers to be vaccinated, but I imagine if they're going to be working with students, if that is a mandate for our employees, then that might be something we are looking at for those regular volunteers that come in. But like I said, at this point, I don't believe we're allowing many guests or special speakers.
Okay, I'll get off of the school fair today. I had seen somebody in the chat ask who was talking. My name's Reverend Michael Ellington, I'm assistant pastor here at New Horizon Baptist Church. I have a question for the health department. So if
Hey, Rev,
Yes.
let me have you hold your question because Amanda's got to go. Let me just ask if there's just two more questions. What do the school do when the parent does not want their child to wear a mask or don't want the child to get the vaccine?
Yeah, so the vaccine, that's fine. We're not requiring that at all right now. But with wearing a mask, that's just going to be one of the requirements for school. And like I said, there are possibly the parent can work with the school to see if there's some alternative face covering options that would be a better consideration or a better fit for that family. But if they are resistant and not willing to wear any kind of face covering, then we would probably encourage them to look at one of our alternative education options rather than the in-person in the building every day.
Gotcha. And there was one other question. If you want to come off mute, Sal, and ask your question.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, last year I paid attention to this. There was a sliding scale kind of in regard to the schools and what would trigger them to do that in-person learning kind of decision. And so I'm wondering, are you guys going to stick over those that have districts stick with the 350, or is that kind of like a moving target now, kind of like a little natural change? And the reason I'm asking this is because there were people who would take the guidance and use it as the gospel, and then when it changed, there was just kind of this, well, why did it change? And so I know that there's science that change, and I would love for a little bit of the general public. So if change, they actually understand the reason why they changed, rather than their attitude, oh, the man's coming after me, or that public health district is just changing their numbers arbitrarily. But I really love for there to be some science behind it so people can understand why they change, rather than they just changed it.
Yeah, please. Please. And I will have to say, I want to thank you so much for having me. And as I think Alexandra is mentioning, that might be more of a Department of Health question that they can answer, because as much as I would like to make those decisions, it is not up to me. And we just rely on the guidance of those who are much more informed and much better experts than we are in public health. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and continuing to connect with our partners.
Thank you so much for your time, Julie. We really appreciate you. All right, Alexandra, would you like to answer that?
So again, I'm Alexandra. I'm the school liaison this year. I also worked with them last year with their COVID response, and I worked with the vaccine for a little while, so I've got kind of a twofold grasp on things in terms of what public health is doing right now. But that being said, regarding that sliding scale that we had last year, we had very clear cut guidance on what we wanted to do, because initially when they sort of there were certain cutoffs or certain things that we would recommend based on those numbers in the community. And both the Department of Health and the CDC have rescinded all those numbers for this particular school year. They said that at this point it would be up to basically when the governor makes his orders and he makes his mandates and he says that schools need to close down, that would be one option. Or if the local health jurisdiction ourselves, if we determine that it's not safe levels in the community, we would then step in and we would make those decisions. That being said, right now, based on our internal talks and based on our talks with all the different administrators at the meeting that Julie referenced that we have every couple Tuesdays, right now we're kind of just looking at the numbers in the community. They're high for sure. They're the highest they've been in Kitsap County, but they're not quite at that level where they are in King County, Snohomish County, those other counties that have delayed their opening for schools. Other counties with numbers that are similar to what we're seeing right now are also moving forward with their school plans. So at this point in time, we don't have any plans to shut it down. That being said, those talks will always be in flux and always be continuing with both our school leaders and how comfortable they are with their schools staying open, with us at the health district, looking at the numbers, looking at where those cases are coming from, where we might be seeing outbreaks, what might be driving those numbers. And then we'll kind of make a joint administrative decision if that is something that needs to happen. That being said, you asked what different things might change that decision. And like I said, it's going to be those driving factors. If we're seeing outbreaks and stuff, but they're within the 30 to 40-year-old age range, obviously we're not going to be as concerned about that spread happening in schools. If we're seeing all of our case rates are increasing and it's all just in that 12 to 18 age range, then, you know, that's obviously going to be a different consideration entirely. If we're seeing one particular district has exponentially higher numbers than some of the other districts, we might make a different recommendation for one district or another. If we're seeing that one school, say pretty much all the public schools are on the same page, but if we had a private school that was doing something that wasn't the same as the other schools, we might change our recommendations for them. So it's going to just be based on those individual situations as we see them.
I appreciate that. Because I have one follow-up question. So, and I think that you gave a great answer, and I really want to say that because I follow this closely and I understand what you're saying, and I feel like that's reasonable and articulate, and people can understand that. My only follow-up question is, based on how it was handled last year, and it seems like literally you just said we're at the highest cases we've been ever. Yet schools were closed last year and we're about to open them like it's totally okay this year, minus, you know, we want people to mask up and have vaccinations. How does the Kitsap Health District actually justify that to the people who are sketched out about, well, you keep changing your information and it's a little weird and blah, blah, blah. Like, it just seems like if I'm trying to be objective, and I'm basing you closed schools off the numbers last year, and it's actually higher now than it was last year. And those are pretty much unvaccinated people, and a lot of those people might be younger people. How can I literally look somebody in the face and say, well, and here's the answer?
So a lot of that last year, it's a multifaceted answer. Last year, part of it was the unknown. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what case rates were going to do, if they were going to continue to keep rising and rising and rising, or if they were going to take off and head back down the way they did. We didn't know how it was going to affect kids yet. We didn't know how it was going to affect our middle-aged staff yet. A lot of that was all still up in the air, and we were still kind of just waiting for the science to see what those repercussions would be. We wanted to keep everybody as safe as possible because we didn't know. That being said, we know a lot more now. We know that it can be very serious and potentially fatal, especially for those who are in that age range that is most common in teachers and faculty members. We know that, especially with the Delta variant, that it is spreading with kids and that it's causing a little bit more trouble than the original COVID virus was. But that being said, we also know now that our Swiss cheese methodology of taking care of those risk factors and stuff works. We know that if we've got those masks, we've got the hand hygiene, we've got the increased ventilation, we've got the social distancing, all those different layered methods in place, we know that we can prevent spread. And we saw it last year. We saw it work when we did actually come back to in-person learning there at the end of that school year. And the studies that they've done nationwide in the schools that stayed open and that were open longer, and even in higher areas of transmission, such as in New York or in Chicago and places like that, they did have lower incidences of spread as long as they were actually putting those protective methods into place and they were following them. And this year, we do have staff that are being vaccinated. We do have the mandates in place where people have to mask. We may not have a specific number or threshold where we're going to just shut it down, but we also have studies backing us that say that, it's not great for kids' mental health to not have that normalcy and not have that day-to-day routine with schooling, to not have that in-person learning available. And we want to promote that accessibility for the kids that maybe don't have access to online learning, or it's more difficult for them. And we want to promote that accessibility to kids who might have special needs or disabilities and really need that face-to-face interaction and contact. So kind of weighing all of those factors together, being open and in person is one of our better compromises out of the situation. We have been in talks with, like I said, I've worked with literally every single school in the county, all the different districts and all the different private schools, and they're all doing their best to make sure that those things are in place and that they're keeping the kids and staff as safe as possible, given what resources we have. And we're promoting testing, we're encouraging vaccination, just everything we can across the board to keep everybody safe.
Thank you. And I mean this when I say this. That's the most comprehensive, honest answer I've ever received, and I completely appreciate it. And I really wish that everybody had this package to give that answer, because it's the most honest, real answer there is. And that's what I will say going forward. And so I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
But I need to jump in. That may be a completely honest answer.
Thank you.
But no, I'm not muted. I'm a teacher in Central Kitsap School District. I'm not representing CK School District, but a number of my classes have 32 students plus in my classes. So while the individual was talking about the schools doing their best, that's not true. Because if that were really true, I wouldn't have 32 students in a classroom where the social distancing is not going to be possible. And so the districts are doing all kinds of political things. In my district, they have a levy coming up and they really don't want to tick off too many levy voters because they need that levy to pass. It's complicated. It's complicated. But to say that schools are doing everything that they can, when I know, being a teacher in the district and being in the district and hearing from many of my colleagues the real issues on the ground, that's not an accurate statement. They talk like they're doing the best, but the reality is that ain't true. So I don't want anyone to get that twisted from that standpoint. All of the COVID stuff aside, my main concern is with all of this talk if anything were to happen where the schools needed to pivot, would the information get to all of the different groups that are represented here? We have some groups that are not literate in English, and a lot of the communication is in English. It might be translated on one part of a website, but as soon as you click on a link, then that's all in English and it's not translated. So what about all those communities where districts don't have translators for those particular groups that have come into our district? So for me, the issue is really a lot about what's the mechanism that we have in place to have good communication for the groups that traditionally are left out? Do we have enough translators? Do we have a logistical thing in place so they get the information? A lot of times in Central Kitsap, they say, go to the website. Well, right off the bat, y'all know from an equity standpoint, that's a non-starter for some people.
Yep.
And if they do go to the website, some of them are not literate enough to be intuitive to navigate to find the information. So we can talk all of this great stuff about what districts are doing, but the reality is they're doing it for people that think like them, the policymakers. But they're not doing it for people that don't think like them, that don't look like them. And whenever you bring it up, they just go like, well, we're trying and we have good intentions, but they never change. I mean, we've been having the same discussion for 30, 40 years. So I'm not having it that these districts are doing the right thing. They've had marginalized students in their districts for decades. And here we are in 2021 having the exact same conversation about how to meet the needs of these individuals with some of the same policymakers. And they aren't doing it. So I'm sorry, if until we build an infrastructure that makes sure that everyone that needs the information gets the information, then we can talk. And I'll just end with this. In Central Kitsap School District, Elizabeth Blandon, my wife, and I have said to the district on numerous occasions, why don't you have your principals in every building build connections with the people and the families that they serve? And that means not only the people and the families, but folks in the community. So if they have a large Hispanic, if they have a large ELL community, if they have a large LGBTQIA community, who are they connecting with in the community so that they can go to them for resources? Our district won't even demand that principals just have that information. So if I'm a principal at a school, I should know people in the community that can help me with the folks in the school that I serve. But I'll bet you if you went to most schools in any of the local districts and said, hey, Mr. Principal, Miss Principal, you have a large Hispanic community. Name me 3 people in the Hispanic community that you know, that if you have some questions and need resources, they can help you. They couldn't do it. Name 3 people in the ELL community, the Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center that helps those students. Name 3 people in that community that you could go to and get support. They couldn't name them. So while we're doing the right thing, meeting and connecting, we have to demand that the school districts do their due diligence and not just sit back and expect everyone to come to them. Every principal, every district administrator should know all of us in this group. And they don't care to know. They react, like Karen Vargas said, they react. They don't respond. If they were responding, they'd be doing the outreach. But this is like the second thing of this I've done. I've seen Julie from Bremerton School District. I haven't seen anyone from South, anyone from North, no district level administrator who makes policy, who makes decisions. Haven't seen anyone from Central Kitsap. And I'll end with this. Central Kitsap School District has a director of equity. Her name is Jenny Zapatka. She should be sitting here listening to this. She should be reaching out to all the people that she knows and says, hey, what's going on in the community? Get me in on some of these podcasts. Get me in. But has she done that? Betcha she hasn't. Some of you probably didn't even know Central Kitsap had a director of equity. So they should be plugged into this.
You know what?
So
You right on, spot on, and I'm going to just say so because we're talking about emergency, equitable responses, whether it's in our educational system or whether it's in our health district. We help to declare racism a public crisis for our health district. But that was just on paper. How have we actually addressed the disparities? We're talking about our response with COVID with our school districts right now. And it is imperative. We have equity teams within those school districts. Am I correct, Mr. Sweet?
What are they doing? School district, they have equity teams in every building, in every department. And I couldn't tell you at this point, I'm back in the classroom. I was a part of that, but I don't know what the plan is going forward. And that may be a question from somebody in the group. Contact Jenny Zapatka, the Director of Equity at Central Kitsap School District, and ask her these questions. And Julie was right. Every building has a COVID administrator. That probably some of the people here in the group had a lot of good questions. They could contact any building, particularly if your child goes to any of those schools. And even if they don't, if you're just from the community, you can contact any building and they can connect you with the COVID administrator, and that person should be able to answer all your questions because that's how we have it set up. So Julie was absolutely.
JD, it's okay. They have a COVID administrator. What about an equity administrator that
don't
would
even
help?
go there.
I'm just asking. I'm just asking because I'm talking about systemic.
Right.
I'm talking about our systems, whether it is in our health district, whether it's in our educational system, our government system. Where are our equity management teams to help us to navigate and get resources and break down these barriers and begin to build these relationships and begin to address the disparities?
Right. So I would say this.
Talk about.
I would say this. Julie, who was here from Bremerton School District, was the director of special programs, I think. I don't know if Bremerton has an equity director, but she seemed like she is kind of in that mode, special programs that can incorporate quite a bit. Like I said, Jenny Zapatka for Central Kitsap School District this year, they have a director. And there are a lot of equity issues tied into the COVID, tied into preparedness, just in terms of, like David was saying about if there's an earthquake, how do you communicate to those communities where language is potentially a barrier? And what's the plan in place to make that communication? The school preparedness is generally about evacuating the building, making sure that you take attendance so that kids are accounted for. If parents come to pick kids up, have a process for that. But there isn't much in our preparedness training that talks about who's communicating with those groups that traditionally the regular communication doesn't work. And they're not sharing that with any teachers. So we don't know when they say, well, we have these 4 language groups in our district, but we don't have any way to communicate with them. We don't have any way to communicate with those parents so the parents know what's going on. We're not having any of that discussion. So there's a lot of
I want to add here
in what's going on.
I brought the schools up is that, and this is just my belief, and I'm just saying this is my personal belief. I believe that it's our job, the people in this room, we are the equity people in that group, in that school district, in that we can't depend on Jenny Zapata or whatever her name is to know that this is going on. We need to give her an invitation to this to show up, and then we can hold her responsible or the school district responsible if she decides not to show up or if they decide not to show up. So I completely agree with everything I've heard. And what I would say is it's our job to inform the people that we want to know and where we want representation to do that, to say, hey, there's this meeting going on and we're going to discuss this and we're going to be asking questions about the school district and you're the equity person for this thing. So we would like you to be here rather than just, and I'm not saying we're doing this, but I don't want to blame her for not being here if she never got the invite. I don't want to blame people for not being here when they're new to the job and they don't know where the meetings are happening or where the groups are going on or and so I totally agree with it. And I think that we are well underserved with inside the school district and all that other stuff. At the same time, I believe it's 1000% on us, the people in the BIPOC people in this group, to be bringing that to those people to say, we demand your representation. Joe Biden, if we're going to give you our vote, we demand these things if we get your vote. And so Jenny Zapata, if we demand this, if you're going to say you represent us. And so until we start to do that and then they fail us, I think that there's room for them to say, well, we didn't know. But I really think that we need to be really on informing them when these meetings are happening, what these things are, how to help us, what we view as success and failure, rather than just kind of putting it out there and hoping that they think that they know how to feel for us.
I agree with you 100% with one caveat. I've been in the Central Kitsap School District since 1977. I've been one of the, if not the only African-American that has spoken out on numerous issues. Jenny Zapata and many others have heard that they have an obligation to reach out to the communities they serve. I agree that we should extend the invitation, but they don't get a pass with the fact that they don't know. The reason they don't know is because they don't go out to meet the community. They don't make an effort to find out what's happening in the community. So as an African-American, I'm sick and tired of having, and I'm not blaming the brother who just spoke, but people saying we have to go to them with hat in hand and invite them. They know we're out there and they could reach out. They just don't do it and haven't done it. So I agree, extend the invitation, be outspoken, but they have a moral obligation to also reach out. If the impetus is they're only going to act if we get in their face, then they're fakers. They're not sincere, because all of us are reaching out. Yeah, and so that's all I'm saying. I feel you.
And can I add to this as well? Because I think it's.
I would ask you to believe it, that they're ignorant and that they don't know how to do it. That they're afraid and that they don't know how to be in this community, and they're afraid they're going to do something wrong, and they're afraid they're going to overstep. And I hope I'm wrong, but I really believe that they're not going to enter this community because they haven't been invited. And I understand that the impetus is on them and they know it's out here, but at the same time, I've seen people come into the BIPOC community and I've seen them offer extensions of help, and I've seen them get shut down and punched in the face because they didn't ask permission first. And so all I'm saying is if we want the things we say we want, we can ask. We don't have to go with hat in hand. We're not begging, we're not nothing. What I'm saying is we're saying we need this. You say you're here for this, so I'd like you to do this. That's all I'm asking them to do. I respect and honor, JD, that you have been here this long and that you've seen all this stuff happen. All I'm saying is I think that if we can give them the invitation and they say no, I'll jump on their ass like stink on shit. Excuse my language, but that's what my mom used to say to me when she was about to beat me. And so,
can I add to this? Can I add a little? Because I definitely have to add to this conversation.
So Okoye, you go, and then Martitha, you jump in.
We have gone hat in hand. We've begged, we've asked, we've inquired, we've invited, we've welcomed to get to the point where we are now, to have a conversation on how are we going to break down these barriers for public safety, emergency preparedness, or even equity within our schools to get information and to be able to respond in a way that levels the playing field, that is giving all of our communities access. And I agree with JD 100%. Because we've come over the last 40 years, hat in hand, inviting, welcoming, begging, and all. We've gone around the mulberry bush. And no, I'm not giving anyone a pass these days, because here we are in the face of a pandemic, in the face of racial crises, in the face of emergencies and crises popping up all over the globe and in our communities and in this nation. And we still cannot respond in an equitable way to be able to address all of these disparities. We've got to do better. And we have to be able to come straight to you and say no more. Because right now, we are in crises. This is not, oh, if I feel like it, or oh, if I wanna. We are in crises. We have an opportunity to shift all of the narratives and shift the way that we have in the past preceded, which has not served any of us. So as we begin to move forward and we begin to say it, we can do better in these areas. Let us begin to transform and change these narratives and begin to work in a way that's going to serve all of our communities. We have that opportunity, but will we do it? We're still in the midst of a crisis and we're challenged on all sides. What will we do moving forward?
Martitha?
Thank you. Yes, answering to JD and to everyone, we plan to have 2 podcasts, one today and a follow-up after the 9/11 event, and Jenny will be in the next podcast. We had to do 2 different sets, but she agreed because I approached that we and the community to asking questions about equity and their mission, because she's in now. And I just mentioned that we'll be bringing her in the next one. So she's scheduled for the next one. We're going to be sending you the information and the link for the next podcast. But that's going to be after the 9/11 event. We're going to bring her here to answer all those questions.
And to build on that, because we do want to move on and respect everyone's time, is this is what the Conduit was built for. This was the vision when we created this. So this isn't a one-off where we come together and we meet and then we go our separate ways and do our work. I want this to be a focal point, to have this discussion, to have this dialogue, and not have it in places where the same faces are in the same meetings, the same decision makers, and others don't get to put their input and questions and concerns out there. In this space, people know who and what is being advocated for, where the gaps are. I think that's critically important. So, this work isn't going to stop here unless we allow it to stop. JD, you actually were next because Deborah is giving her time for now. So did you want to, you're good? All right. I definitely appreciate that. I love the discussion. This is what this is supposed to look like, right? These conversations. So let's go on to Jill Stanton from the Bremerton Housing Authority.
Hi, Marwan. Thank you. And I will be quick because I know we're running out of time here. So at the Bremerton Housing Authority, we're focused obviously on housing. And I would just say that talking about emergency management planning, I think what we've discovered and we've known for a while is that the most vulnerable in emergencies are often those that are not housed. So for us, the priority is really figuring out how to fully utilize the housing authority's programs to ensure that we are doing everything we can to get vouchers on the street and to get people in homes. Right now, we also have the emergency voucher program. We've partnered with several different agencies throughout our community to try to target specific people. And we did a lot of outreach to try to figure out, okay, who are the ones that are the most vulnerable that we need to serve better and more equitably. So we're in that process. We have 38 of those vouchers, and we currently have 18 people that have been referred and are in process. And I think the other thing that I just wanted to mention here is that I really feel strongly that our job as the housing authority is really to also address the lack of affordable housing. And I think it's more than just what the housing authority can do. We really definitely have to partner with other agencies to provide wraparound services, especially for our voucher holders who are struggling to find housing in this really tight market. One of the things that we're doing right now is trying to ensure that the payment standards that we apply to the vouchers are capable of competing in the market here in Kitsap County, where people are renting. And one of the things that affects that is the fair market rents. So those come out by HUD each year. They publish the fair market rents for all of the communities. And this year, for 2022, the fair market rents came in just slightly above the 2021 fair market rents. And so what that means for us is that our vouchers and what we are able to pay for rent are not going to keep up with the market rents in Kitsap County. So the Housing Authority is actually going to contest that. We've never contested it before, but the board is supportive of us doing that. So I'm not going to get into exactly how we're going to do that, but I just wanted the community to know that the Bremerton Housing Authority is doing everything we can to ensure that we're getting the funding that we need to fund all of the vouchers that we have, and that we are investing in wraparound services to help address the barriers that our clients are having in finding housing. So I'll end there. Thank you, Marwan.
Thank you so much for that. I definitely appreciate that. Now, Alexandra needs to go, so she agreed to stay on. Martitha, if you had a comment really quick, because
Yes.
we do let her go. Go ahead.
Thank you. For Gio, you say you have vouchers and you guys are meeting the barriers of the community. We have undocumented families that they do not have the social security number. I know there is a lot of requirements. What do you do in this case? Because I had seen that haven't been served or meet their needs.
So we do have to follow HUD rules. Now, for the emergency voucher program, we can accept people into that program without having a social security card or number at the front end of it, but eventually we would have to get that. So unfortunately, we do everything that we can. Every waiver that HUD allows us to do, we implement to make it less challenging. And we still have to follow the rules or we will lose the funding. So, on top of that, I attend a lot of advocacy and talk a lot with HUD and other agencies about the barriers that these people face. So, we try to attack it from that point of view as well. But again, we are stuck under HUD rules and we have to follow them. Did that answer your question?
Yes and no. It's just need to meet those barriers because again, you guys had to go through the federal requirements that they need to own their social security number or IT number. But again, meanwhile, can you guys get another pot of money that doesn't require for them, to them to provide their social security number and to meet their needs? There's those families that they don't have the support from housing because that's the barrier. So there is any other sources that you guys can get money and put it aside for those undocumented people that really need those families, the support of housing? It's just, they had to wait. And I would like to see some support there, to eliminate those barriers and gaps.
Are you talking about people that would never be able to get a social security number, or are you talking about people that just don't have it and need help to get it?
Undocumented. We know they will be able to get a social security number. It can go past years and years. They're going to be waiting for housing. Meanwhile, they can end up. So I think we need to come with a solution. And if housing authority can look into different, instead of getting separate grants, I know that there are some grants out there that doesn't require, social security for the families.
Yeah. Well, I'm willing to look into anything that I can to help. So, I'm not aware of those, but I've been I've been obviously way more involved on the federal and the HUD side of funding. But I'm open. If you have some ideas or of these things and you think that we should be involved, please call me. I always take calls or call you back.
Jill, I also have a question for you. We've worked with families and friends that during this COVID, they've put them up. They've been couch surfing from family to family. What kind of resources do you have to help those individuals and families that are trying to support even relatives and loved ones and friends just to keep them off the street, that have been found themselves homeless or unhoused during this pandemic? What kind of services do you have for those families that are struggling to support those that are homeless? And I can speak from my own personal experience. I have housed and put them up in the garage, in the living room, on the floor, you know, in the back room, just so that they weren't on the street. What can we do to support those that are supporting those that are homeless in their transitions? What can be done about these situations?
Now, Jill, before I have you answer, what I'll do is I'll have you consider your answer and let Alexandria go on. And then what we'll do is we'll partner Jill with Matt and get a comprehensive answer from KCR and BHA together. Does that sound okay, Okoye? All right. So, Alexandra, from Kitsap Public Health District, thank you so much for staying on. I know we're over your slot by quite a bit. She also has a little one that she needs to get in bed, but we do want to hear from Kitsap Public Health. So go ahead and jump in there.
I think I touched on a lot of what I was going to talk about earlier when I was answering questions about potential school closures and everything. So I kind of liked the segue there a few minutes ago, but I did want to just touch on the fact that while I'm not on the equity team specifically because I'm so entrenched in my school's work, and school going back into session has been a very, very busy couple weeks for me. We do have an equity group that is being established at Kitsap Public Health. It's always been something that we've strived for in general, but we have a lot of projects that are actually in the works right now, headed by not only one of our directors, but they just hired a new manager for that equity division as well. So there's definitely work and effort being put into that. Right now, I think their focus is on getting COVID information and vaccines out into the community for those who need them. We've also been going to a lot of the food banks, a lot of the libraries, farmers markets, places where we know that we can reach at need people. We've reached out to different Black-owned businesses, and we've had vaccine clinics there, and a couple different places where we knew that we could reach homeless people. We've had what we call our Eagles Wings strike team that has gone out and done vaccinations for homebound individuals. And so we're doing a lot of work with just trying to increase accessibility to that for sure. Unfortunately, I can't speak to all the other work that the equity team's doing. I'm sure that there's plenty more of it, but again, that hasn't really been my wheelhouse. But I have told Marwan that I will definitely pass on his information to the liaison that got me in touch with him, and we'll get somebody on the equity team back in here as well, because I'm sure that they would be more than happy to meet with and talk with you folks as well.
Absolutely. Dave is saying that COVID-19 testing in South Kitsap begins this Wednesday, 9 to 1 at Grace Bible Church. And I'll put that in the chat. One of the things that I've started to see, Alexandra, is kids are starting to become more and more sick, and parents don't know, what it is. Is it a cold? Is it COVID? They're looking for resources. So I think, they'll go to Rite Aid or somewhere else and they'll get two other rapid tests for $25 if they can afford it. And that's not always affordable, especially every time there's a runny nose or some type of a symptom. It's like, okay, go spend $25. But when they can't do that, they can sign up and go through some of the drive-through areas and get tested. But that takes a few days. So should parents hold their kids back from activities like school and sports? What should be done there? What's the recommendation there?
So the general recommendation from both the CDC and the DOH, and of course that's on the local level, is if your kid is feeling sick, even if you're like, oh, well, maybe it's just allergies, or, oh, you know, maybe it's just a cold, we definitely recommend at least keep them out for about 24 hours to monitor, if not for longer. If those symptoms persist, testing is definitely going to be your next step. Whether, and I know that that sounds out of touch, because you know, my whole family actually just recently came down with cold, and we had to all go get COVID swabbed, and we all came back negative, thank goodness. But it's one of those things. Testing in the community is not easy to access right now. It is limited. Urgent cares are turning people away if you're not symptomatic, and that excludes a large portion of our close contacts that we really want to get screened so that they can prevent spread if they do become positive. We've got primary care physicians that are turning people away. We've got the pharmacies that won't test anybody under 5. So it definitely, it is hard. And I totally, I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen it in my work. It's not easy to just go out and get a test in the community. And we are trying to increase accessibility for that as well. As you guys mentioned, they just finalized the plans for that South Kitsap site. We're also working towards a site on Bainbridge Island soon. So we'll have one in Bremerton, one on South Kitsap, and one on Bainbridge. There's plans to potentially look into a North Kitsap site, and there's plans to look into something in the Silverdale area, but I don't know how far along those plans have gotten yet. Again, my wheelhouse has mostly been the vaccine side of things, or the school side, but I have heard talks about that. But yeah, anytime you have any of those symptoms that could potentially be COVID-like, the best course of action is play it safe. Keep everybody else in the community safe. If you can keep those kids home, keep them home. If you can't keep them home, try to find other means of keeping them away from schools, because we definitely don't need, even if it's just a cold or the flu, we don't need to spread stuff in schools right now. And yeah, just monitor those symptoms at least for 24 hours, and then try to seek testing if you can.
Yeah.
So kind of as a statement more than, you know, a question for you, is that this seems to be what the challenge is in the first place, right? So as school comes back in, from an equitable standpoint, many of our parents can't afford to keep their kids home, right? You know, they're doing away with unemployment, the eviction moratorium is going away. So my kids got to go to school. I got to go to work, or we're going to be out in the street, right? And so it incentivizes, you know, folks to send their kids to school, right? And that's how I grew up. You know, if you weren't dying, you're going to school. You got to go. And my dad, if he wasn't dying, he was going to work, because that's
You're
what
telling
it
the
takes.
nurse. Trust me, we don't usually go to the doctor, or we don't, you know, we oh, you have a runny nose, that's, you know. But yeah, right now with COVID and everything, if it's possible at all, our desperate plea is, you know, try to keep the kids away from the other kids while they're sick.
But I think that's the thing, is it's not possible. It's like saying, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so as folks start going to school, and whether they have COVID symptoms or not, you know, my fear is coming this fall and winter, where we'll actually see a true flu season and a true COVID season together, is a recipe for disaster. So, I mean, we're talking about, you know, remarkably warm weather here in the Pacific Northwest, and we still have this outbreak, and we're pretty progressive as far as, you know, our vaccination numbers, and we still have this issue. So this seems to be a tremendous concern for me, and I think a lot of other folks in the community, as I see heads nodding. So what is public health thinking about to try to stave some of that off, if anything?
Well, we typically in the past have done flu vaccine clinics as well. So we're hoping to potentially pick those back up again. But of course, that's only one facet of the potential issue here. We for sure know that childcare is a barrier, and that a lot of people end up using schools as childcare, and they have to. And I've talked to the different schools about that, and about the fact that, you know, even with our attestations last year, there were definitely people who slipped through the cracks. And, you know, we saw cases where parents gave kids Tylenol first thing in the morning, and then by afternoon they were definitely sick and they shouldn't have been at school. We saw issues where they admitted that they just didn't have childcare, so they just sent them, and we're positive that we're probably going to see that kind of scenario again. It's an unavoidable situation. You can't pay a babysitter to watch your sick kid whenever your babysitter is scared of getting COVID, or if you can afford a babysitter at all, and then sending them to school becomes one of the only options for people. And while we strongly discourage that, we know that there's not going to be a way to 100% avoid it. Families are just going to have to either assess their level of risk that they're willing to assume, and that's actually where I'm at personally as a parent, not as a Kitsap public health employee. I'm sending my daughter back to public school this year. She's not old enough to be vaccinated yet, and it does definitely cause me a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, being concerned that she could be exposed to COVID. She could be bringing other illnesses into the home, and I've got a younger baby and a toddler, and my older father lives with us. So those are definitely concerns all around for us as well as a household. But in terms of like preventing that entirely, there's just not a whole lot in terms of resources. We can connect people with Kitsap Community Resources potentially for childcare, low-cost childcare, but even those centers are going to request that you don't send your kids when they're sick. We can try to support the folks that are COVID positive and need to isolate or quarantine. We have some internal social work resources for that, for grocery delivery, medication delivery, things like that. And the Department of Health also does whenever they're monitoring those positive cases. But outside of that, it's definitely a need.
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your time. I know Amanda is here and she needed to go. Was there one final thing that she wanted to say?
Oh, no, I'm good. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and definitely appreciate hearing everybody's concerns.
Okay, so there are two Amandas.
Yeah.
Amanda
Yeah.
Pysick.
Like, sorry.
Is Amanda Pysick still here in the room with us?
Olympic College. Yeah, from Olympic College.
Or did she already jump off?
And what about Carl Jacobson? Is he left?
Carl Jacobson, he was in the Zoom and he had to go. The conversation went so great and was so engaging. We're definitely over time. We're almost at the end, but we couldn't quite make it to all the voices. But Alexandra, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you need to go. I do look forward to connecting with you. And I'm part of the group with Holly and I believe Okoye and Martitha, and several of us are on that group, Deborah. So those conversations are happening. And so the hope is that we'll be able to, continue those conversations. And again, bring these conversations more to the people. It's great because public health wasn't doing it at all before. So we're doing it now, or they're doing it now. And then we just need to continue to, penetrate the community.
I'd also like to thank Alexandra for coming on. But Alexandra, we also have requests of our health district that our health district support with testing and vaccine stations for our 9/11, 911, SOS, help. We need support in ensuring that all of our communities stay safe and that we are responding in a way that serves all of them for the saving of lives, because this is why we're doing this work. We want to be proactive when it comes down to our public health and safety, and we don't want to see the disasters that we have seen in the past, whether it's 9/11, Katrina, Puerto Rico, or any other regions where lives are lost. And when we can prepare and begin to do some, what I would call some intervention and prevention around ensuring that our communities have the information and the resources they need to keep their own lives healthy and safe. So with that being said, I hope that the health district will be in attendance for our 9/11 and that we begin to invite our gatekeepers as well as organizations that can make an impact to support this work. We all hands on deck for this one, whether it's our military or any of our organizations within our county to help support getting information out to our underserved populations in Kitsap County.
Karen, just wanted to add, in collaboration, the health district in collaboration with Peninsula, they will be providing the vaccines. They already confirmed. Okay.
Do we have testing going on as well, where they can walk up and get testing? It would be great if we can get some testing. It would be great if we can have our first responders to be able to support all of this work.
And Dave has comments. I think his last comment, Marwan.
I'm gonna have Dave come on. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming. I
Thank you.
very much
Thank
appreciate
you,
you and look forward to having you back again. All right, Dave, you want to come back on?
Well, thank you. Yes, I'd be glad to just share a couple additional thoughts that I forgot to say earlier on. I talked about the importance of preparedness, but I didn't mention what is one of our key strategies, and that has to do with the importance of connecting with organizations and neighborhoods. And so we believe strongly that even a couple neighbors working together is the catalyst for making a huge difference in any given neighborhood. And we're excited to work with neighborhoods to give support and resources. And organizations, we want to be the kind of the quiet voice in the background supporting, because it's the organizations that have the impact on their people and their sphere of influence. We want to support that. So please allow me to help as I can as you all continue the good work you do in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much appreciate you for that. For sure.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate you.
Now let's go ahead and circle back to Jill for her answer. And yeah, Jill, come on up. And if Matt, if you want to, add in there, go ahead also.
How long? So Marwan, do you have a time when we need to get off of this, or?
No, as people need to go, they can go.
They just go.
But yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can just tell you the resources that the Housing Authority currently has. So we have our Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is funded by HUD. That, as you know, we opened the wait list in March. We are currently in process of issuing 600 vouchers from that waitlist opening. We also have our public housing and affordable housing. We have very few vacancies in those programs. We don't have a lot of local funding, and we do not run any kind of shelter programs. I think Matt might be able to talk about what's available in the community for that. So I would say that the most important thing when you're thinking about, the issue of people not having homes, or families taking in other people to sleep on their, on their couches or in their other spaces. I think what you're talking about is that we really have a crisis of a lack of affordable housing. It's all over the nation. It's huge here in Kitsap County. And this kind of speaks to an overall effort of the Universal Voucher Program, where if you qualify to have a voucher, you just get one. So there's a big push for that right now. And to the extent that communities and people can really advocate to our politicians for that, I think will be one of the ways that we can resolve some of these problems. But of course, even with that, we just need more housing. So that has to be a local effort. So I'll end with that and let Matt answer.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. And my name is Matthew Garrett. I'm with Kitsap Community Resources. I'm the housing manager, and we work closely with Bremerton Housing Authority on a lot of homeless services and eviction prevention. And And the friends and family issue is a real big one. And I think, Jill, you hit the nail on the head, is it really is an affordability issue as far as our housing supply, and then how affordable that housing actually is. And I'm in all support of the universal voucher program. Bremerton Housing Authority and us, because there's just not enough resources, we have to play kind of endless prioritization games, because there's just not nearly enough resources for everyone in the community. So typically friends and families are folks that have gotten left out of that equation, meaning that they're not homeless by a lot of HUD definitions. Homeless services really kick in when they're in a place not meant for human habitation, they're in a shelter, transitional housing program, or they're fleeing domestic violence, or exiting a system of care or an institution without a place to stay. And those are kind of our typical homeless services that qualify them. But if you're on a friend's couch, or you're with your mom, or you're with your dad, you're actually housed. And in a lot of ways, because we don't have enough resources for even our existing homeless population, if people can double up, we encourage them to do that, because that's typically a lot better situation than if they're actually homeless and there's just not enough resources for our current homeless population. So typically homeless services have been geared towards folks that are, literally homeless or in shelter, right? Not folks that are friends and family. And that's not to say those folks don't need help, don't need resources. It's just to say we've had to prioritize other people that are on the face of it more vulnerable. And so I don't want to anyone to hear me wrong that we're saying that those folks don't need assistance. I get it's incredibly challenging, and we always applaud folks that are willing to take people in. And it's an amazing act to do for friends and family. I will say our new program, so a lot of the federal funds that have come in, that's our KEPA program, that's our eviction prevention program. That program has allowed some flexibility to help friends and family that are people that are doubled up. We've been able to, those are folks that are behind on rent, and then we can help them get caught up. The only tricky thing there is if they are subletting. That's some of the issues that have come up, and if they don't have permission to sublet. That's where some people can kind of get in trouble. Like if they're let someone come stay and then they're charging them rent, but then with their landlord, they don't have permission to do that. And that's part of our, obviously we want to help them, but that's part of our landlord building relationship aspect as well, is where we need to respect our landlords and honor the arrangement those folks have. And in some case that can be with Section 8, right? So Bremerton Housing Authority can be involved. So those folks, we definitely will always try to qualify them no matter their situation, but sometimes we got to either qualify them as a whole household and then help. So there is assistance now more than ever with our KEPA program, our eviction prevention for folks that are doubled up. But we definitely, when they're working with our navigators, have them explain the whole situation, look at the lease, because we don't want to, put them in a situation that could jeopardize their housing, and that we can actually pay and help them properly. So our team is always trying to qualify people, to put people in instead of disqualify folks. Marwan, do you want me to talk more about the KEPA program now, or should I hold off?
If you just give us a really quick overview for it, because I know you and I, come together over Monday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the KEPA program, that's our big eviction prevention program. This is the most amount of money we've ever seen, and it's awesome. It's still not scratching the need of the community. But these are for folks under 50% affected, under 50% area median income. And we have charts like that on our website. They need to be affected by COVID and lost some money and behind on their rent. And the great thing about this program is the Kitsap County has also contracted with outreach organizations to work with populations that have historically been underserved by these types of programs. And this has been really, really positive. We've met and exceeded our racial equity goals. Like we've served more folks than the percentage that are in poverty. And we've exceeded that by far margins. And that's really kind of the goals that we had. And that's really due to the outreach partners. So I just want to big shout out to them, Surviving Change, Foundation for Homeless Poverty Management, Marwan, Gather Together, Grow Together, Hope 360, Kayak, and Mount Zion partnering for youth achievement. So that's some of the equity work that we're doing regarding this program, is they're actually outreaching to those communities to try to bring them in for rent assistance. And so that's back to the friends and families. We train them on how to refer folks, and we connect with them to try to get everyone that are in all these situations, because we understand there's all types of situations like this that are that people are in just to survive. And so we definitely want to help as many of those folks as possible. So if you are out there and that's kind of like Jill said, our housing is our crisis that we're working. You can go to kcr.org or you can work with one of those agencies. If you go to kcr.org or our building at 1201 Park Avenue, there is a wait list. So that's about 3 to 4 weeks long at this point. And you can fill out an application electronically, or you can come to 1201 Park Ave Housing Solutions Center. That's where that's where you access resources. And that's 360-473-2035. And I think that's the quickest spiel I can give, Marwan.
Hey, I appreciate that. And is it still accurate that if they come through one of the buy-in fours, all the organizations that you just listed, that they would be given priority versus them coming straight into KCR? Is that still true?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So they basically because part of this grant, there was racial equity goals, meaning that we wanted to serve the population that was actually in poverty. So for instance, there's 5% of the Black population in Kitsap that's in poverty. I think that's more than the total percentage. So basically there's a higher percentage that's in poverty than there should be. And so these organizations, we've partnered with them that they can refer folks in directly without going on the wait list. So that's how we're prioritizing. And last year with this program, our goal was 5%, and this program served just under 30% were Black folks. And so we credit all of our outreach organizations and their prioritization process, that they're not going on the wait list, that we're giving them priority, that we're first, and trying to really address some of the historical wrongs that have been done to the populations that have been underserved by these types of programs. So you're absolutely correct, Marwan.
All right. Were there follow-up questions by Martita or Okoye or anyone else?
We just want to thank everyone for accepting the invitation to come to the podcast, and we're going to follow up with another set after the 9/11. Greatly appreciate everyone, and this is the beginning, and we, going to be collaborating each other to make, this happen, to serve the marginalized community and eliminating barriers. Ms. Karen, you want to say something?
I sure do. I just want to make sure that we offer the extended invitation for everyone to join us 9/11 at the 9/11 Memorial at Evergreen Park on 9/11, beginning at 9/11. And so we're just thankful to be able to get this information out to our communities. We would like our organizations to please support and bring the resources so that our community can get the information that they need to stay safe. Thank you.
And thank you. And our greatest appreciation to all of you, and Marwan, thank you for being here and putting this together to support the community. Thank you.
Are there any other thank you for that. Are there any other final thoughts? JD, Sal, Mr. Vargas is on. Jill or Matt, any final thoughts? Everyone seems to be okay. What I will say is this. We had an ambitious list, and everyone obviously couldn't make it. We still have vacations and everything else, and the sausage is messy when you're trying to make it and work with technology and everything else. And that our big show twice a month actually meets in studio, but because of the variant kind of getting out of control, we've had to go back to a virtual space. Well, we know how to do this now. We have no excuse. And so we've got to look at the bright side of a lot of different things. And this has really given us an opportunity to say, while we're isolating, we can come together. We can have these conversations. They don't have to be easy conversations, but they're conversations that long have needed to be been had, right? And so folks also need to hear that these conversations are being had on their behalf, because a lot of times they don't know, right? They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They don't know that JD Sweet's been doing this work for decades. They don't know what, Okoye has been doing to, capture our history. They don't know what Deborah Jackson has done for the 30 years to be stewards of children as they grow into adulthood, and she still has them under her wing, right? They don't know what Martitha has done in the community through, the college, the organizations she's created, being someone who is as a connector of people and organizations and is a steward. We tapped on her, maybe not even a week and a half ago, and she used her leverage and her relationship to bring many of you together, which I couldn't have done on my own. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. Of course, Matt coming on for KCR every Monday, and Jill, coming on. I think it's so very important that folks are willing to do the work. Here it is. It's 8:15, right? Folks are putting their kid to bed and extending bedtimes right before school starts. You have executive directors and managers of programming that are showing by their actions of being here that they are invested and they do want to see something different. And so for that, I definitely applaud you all.
Oh.
Now, because it is so late and we had so many people on, clearly we need to do this more often, but with smaller numbers. But the bottom line is we need to do it. So I hope that you all will be willing to continue to have these conversations, to do the work, find ways to collaborate, have those hard conversations, make progress, and do better. I am Marwan Cameron, and for this entire group, this is the Conduit, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.